thank iRadio USA for giving us this platform today. Today, I'm joined by three very special ladies. We have Linda, Mary Ann, and Janet in left to right order. So I want to thank you ladies for joining us today. I'm very excited, and thank you for your time. So good morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I got to know a little bit about what you ladies do. I'm sorry, I keep saying girls, but what you ladies do. Maybe you can introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about backpacks.
So, should I start?
Yeah.
You start. Okay, my name is Linda Newson, and I am here today in honor and memory of my son Adam, who passed away from an overdose 5.5 years ago. And when someone that close, there's not even a name for losing a child. And the truth of the matter is that when someone is in the disease of addiction, there was a lot of loss along the way. So when Adam died, it was, how do I honor him? How do I honor his memory? And how do I honor his life? And so we started making beads, or I started making beads for other angel moms that I met. And the first person I met was Janet.
Nice.
So I lost my son in July of 2015 of a heroin overdose. And the way I met Linda was through a neighbor of mine who was a good friend, and also a very close family friend to Linda. So she asked if I would meet with her, which we did. We had breakfast together, and she brought me beads that said, "Look up for Vaughn," which is my son's name. She explained how the beads came about, where her son used to make them, and they had inspirational sayings, and that they go on the rearview mirror of the car. So we left. We both had to go to work. I put the beads up on the mirror, and I'm driving away, and I just found I started smiling at the beads, and they were swaying in the car, and I said, my goodness, these beads, I just feel my son. It was a beautiful gesture, and there was just something magic about the beads. I don't know if our children inspire to make them or whatever. So I said, I have to call her and tell her this, but she's going to think I'm crazy. I did anyway, and that was really the spark of us starting the group, that there was something more to these beads than meets the eye, and they were very special. And that's how the ball got rolling. And then Mary Ann came into the picture because she was in a group that I was in.
And my name is Mary Ann. I lost my son, Anthony, in May 2015 from a heroin overdose. And I first met Janet in another group. And Vaughn had passed in July, and Janet and I met there, and we found out that we also had signed up for another group together without even knowing it. So we went through that group, and Janet brought Linda in because at the end of the group, they had, it was art therapy. So Linda came in, and she was making beads that Adam, as a child, used to make for her and her family. So the beads spoke to me. And when Linda was doing her first fundraiser in memory of Adam, Look Up, Rock On, and she brought a lot of the moms upstairs on stage. And we looked out at the audience, and we saw them just looking at us kind of in awe that we could all stand up and talk about it. And that's when I leaned over to Linda and I said, we really are something.
We really are something.
And we started making the beads. We started with 3 of us around a table, just making the beads. Then it turned to 5. And today we have over 500 on our Facebook following. And it all started.
Angel Bumps?
Yes, Angel Bumps. From the beginning of 2016.
Yeah.
Wow, it's quick.
The unique thing is that now that COVID hit, we had to go to Zoom for the meetings. And that, from a negative, became a huge positive, because now we have people from all over the country, all over the world, signing in to be a part of the group.
That's phenomenal.
It's just amazing.
Now the group is Beading Hearts. That's where they find you on Facebook?
Beading Hearts, yes.
The Beading Hearts, yeah.
So that's important. I'll put that in the description. I started the description. I didn't put that in, but I think it's important for parents to know what's going on. And, you know, there's things in life that I always tell people, like, you don't know. You could sympathize. You don't know unless you experience it. And I can imagine the experience that you ladies have been through, having lost, you know, your children. And it's devastating. I think from the outside, not knowing what it's like, it's devastating.
It's something that you really, like you said, you can't describe it to somebody, and they might think that they understand what it feels like, but unless it's happened to you, you don't really understand. It is the most devastating thing that in my life that's ever happened. And I've had other loss, family loss, suddenly, brothers, parents, things like best friends. Nothing compares to losing a child.
And the collateral damage along the way and afterwards also.
Right.
You know, we hear such stories about how people don't know how to show up, don't know how to be part of a conversation, don't know what to ask, don't know when not to say something. And so the rift that's created in people who you thought were going to be your closest people, all of a sudden it's not there anymore.
They disappear.
They disappear. They disappear, maybe not physically, but emotionally.
Right.
They're just, they can't be present because, you know, and we're not faulting. It's that they don't know how, because no one knows how to do this.
Yeah.
No one knows how to do this. So what we find happening, I am covered from head to toe. What we find happening is that we don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
All we have to do is be
present.
together. Yeah.
Just looking at one another makes all the difference in the world, because there's a camaraderie there.
Exactly.
It's an instant sister or familyhood, per se, because I know your pain.
Yeah.
I know what you're feeling. And it's huge.
And we can say anything. Every one of us, that's one of the biggest things. We all show up without judgment, where the rest of the world judges our children
There is a
and
big
us.
stigma.
and us
And
and us
Yeah.
for the death,
Yes.
for their death, because they will say they chose it.
Yeah.
They did not choose to be addicted.
They didn't. And let me tell you, from the hundreds that I have spoken to at this point, there is not one parent, aunt, uncle, family member that's involved that will say that that child wanted to be a drug addict.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the way it happens.
Right.
And the stigma, even though they say it's not really as bad as it was, is ever present. And I even hear it from friends and family, not even realizing what they're saying.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. Let me tell you, these kids, every last one of them are awesome children.
Yeah.
It's not the bad things that happen and the horrible things you go through is the drug. It's not the child.
Exactly.
The children are awesome. They're caring, considerate. And I'm not just saying this because it's my son and I lost him, but my son Vaughn was one of the most compassionate people I've ever met.
Right.
I'll still say it to this day. The kid was amazing as far as that goes, from a very, very early age. Caring, would do stuff for anybody, picked up on things even as a young child that most adults wouldn't pick up on.
Yeah.
They were amazing people.
I think part of the misconception is people go to broad generalizations or immediately think of a stereotype that doesn't fit everybody. You know, I know a lot of people think that heroin addiction starts out with IV use, and a lot of times it starts out by snorting or other methods. And, you know, regular everyday kids with, you know, great upbringings, just getting snared in it. And I think that's part of the problem with this negative view, like you mentioned before, like people chose this. And I've spoken to people that just tried it, and next thing you know, that was the path. You know, they just had this genetic predisposition to it.
Exactly.
Well, I have to tell you that my son Anthony, he was no saint, but he was my baby.
Mhm.
And actually his son is now 10 years old. His son, when he died, was 5, but he was jumped at a graduation party, kicked repeatedly in the face, fractured both jaws. They were wired shut. He was giving a painkiller, Oxy,
Mhm.
and that got him addicted to that, which led to the heroin.
Yeah.
Am I going to say that my son would have never gone in that direction? Of course, I'm not going to say that. But he didn't choose. That was basically chosen for him because of the mind altering it does, the opioids.
The
I
same
think
thing
the
happened.
problem is a lot of doctors open that door unknowingly. I think that it happened, and you look back, and again, I always compare things a lot to what people are exposed to, be it TV news shows. And I'm binge watching Grey's Anatomy, and there's a lot of reference to, we're going to put you on a painkiller, we're going to put you on a painkiller. But I think that's people think of that I have an injury, I need a painkiller, and then they don't really realize the door that opens up now, and then people get into a situation where they door the prescription, and then
Do we know now?
alternative.
Do we know now?
We
Has
No,
that
I think
changed?
we said. I think it's lagging. I think that you ladies have made it possible to raise awareness for this, but I think people still think that first way to go is we need a pill to fix it, and next thing you know, they become dependent upon it.
Yes, absolutely. Because
Mhm.
the same thing happened to my son. He had some health issues and he had many surgeries in a short amount of time. And they kept putting him on oxycodone. And that's what started his addiction.
Yeah.
Shame on Purdue, honestly, who's the
Well,
manufacturer.
that's a whole other issue, that they were aware of the potential, and that's another thing that people need to realize, that they're culpable in this. And I'm amazed that they don't have immunity, because the pharmaceutical companies have immunity for all kinds of things. But I was glad that this came to light, and people began to understand their knowing participation in this crisis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's it's interesting. Now you had mentioned before how the camaraderie. It's something right before you said it, I was thinking of it, because there's nothing like that kind of support. I think you can have friends and family who you love dearly. They're with you their whole lives, and this loss or this experience separates you from lifelong friends, because they just can't get the depth of grief and what's going on. And I tell people all the time, when I have something unrelated, certainly not of this magnitude in my life, but you'll be around other parents that experience the same thing, and just, you don't even have to speak, you just know it. And
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
the other thing that's good about the group is people that are just coming in that have newly lost their children, we give them hope.
Yeah.
Because they're so distraught and so lost and so hurt. And then they can see us in a different light from where they're at, and that there's light going ahead.
It's possible. It's possible. The possibility
That's
of
huge
it.
for people.
Well, that's the hard part. And I think that, I've watched parents in different stages of loss. And there's always that advice of what you should do. And there was one gentleman who was wonderful, and they lost their son, unfortunately. And the mother was very distraught. She had turned to alcohol and became more a kind of not a recluse, I think is a poor word to use, but basically she didn't want to leave the house. And he was grieving in a different way, and he started to therapeutically work on the house and do things. And the neighbors were like, "Oh, he's going crazy. He's doing this. He's doing that." It's just like, what would you do? If this was your child, you need some kind of outlet. You need something. And I think that I don't know what people expect you to do when you lose a child. It's like, it has to be some kind of release. I need something or somebody to get me through this. And did you ever experience people with just meaning well, but saying things like, time will heal, or, this too shall pass, those kinds of things which drive you crazy?
Yeah, we hear that. You hear a lot of things that people, I think, mean well, and they almost just don't know what to say. So they say something, but it's not, the pain never goes away. It just changes.
Yeah.
Softer. We call it softer.
and we try to.
Wait, what do you call it?
We say that it's not as intense. It gets softer. It's
Okay.
always there underneath, and it's kind of like an ocean wave that will go
Ebbs
like
and
this.
flows.
It ebbs and flows. It comes, it goes. And we also say that everyone grieves differently.
There's no right or wrong.
There's no
Yeah.
right or wrong, and
And
you can't have anybody tell
And there's
you
no
how to
have-tos.
grieve.
That you don't
Exactly.
have to do something.
Oh.
If something is feeling the right thing for you to do,
And that's what they
that's
need to
the
do.
thing to do.
Yeah.
If it means staying in bed all day, stay in bed all day.
Yeah.
That's another stigma. Well, not a stigma, but a lot of people feel they're under a pressure because
Yeah.
other people are
Yes.
telling them, "Why aren't you over this
Yeah.
already?"
Yeah,
You're,
Or,
exactly.
you're still
"You
that
need to
way.
move on."
Yeah.
And
You need to get over this.
they're stressing. It's
It's-
an added stress
Yeah,
to
yeah,
what's
yeah.
already the most horrendous thing that could happen to you.
I tell people all the time when you try to explain loss to someone dear, that you just pick, it's a hole in you that you have to learn to live with. And I said, perhaps if you live life, you lost your arms, you're alive, you're moving around, but you're never hugging anyone again. And you're always going to have that missing. So you can't expect me to think of life as the way it used to be. I'm learning to live differently. I'm learning to live with this tremendous loss.
We were talking about that last night, and
Yeah.
it's as if you're learning to live with it. As I want to say that companion, it's not the exact word I'm looking for, but we acknowledge that it's always here.
Mhm.
The thought, the feelings, our child, our
Mhm.
children, they're always here in the background. So how do we navigate through life with that? So that we're not making them separate, we're not keeping them away from us, but integrating the experience and the allness of it through what we're going through now.
Yeah.
Right? It's an integration, and it's learning through that. It's growing through that. It's allowing that.
I had a question because you three ladies have the pictures of your sons with you, and it starts to make me think like, I think the beads are a beautiful reminder, and they're sweet and something I think the positive look at. But I know a lot of parents I know deal with children that they can't see anymore. Not like you ladies, where their children have passed. And I know personally for me, looking at pictures is very difficult.
Oh,
There's some moms and dads that cannot
big trigger.
It's a trigger.
It's
Sure.
a trigger.
And that's
Yeah,
okay
and-
too.
Exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And one of the other things that we find as a group, a lot of us have, I call it the woulda, shoulda, couldas,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
guilt. With if I
Yes.
had done this,
Right.
maybe he wouldn't be dead.
Right.
If I had done that. But then you come to find when there's 50 of us together, we all tried different things, but
Exactly.
yet all of our children are gone.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any woulda, shoulda, couldas, which helps a lot of parents sometimes when they can see that,
Right.
well, I did do that and my child's gone, and I did that and my child's gone.
Right.
I think that's very important, especially together with the support, because I think that when you're isolated, you self-blame and you try to think of, think in retrospect, and everything makes sense in retrospect, what I could have done, perhaps just to change it. But I think to realize other parents tried, and it was just, sometimes there are things in life that are out of your control or completely unfair or unjust. And, who could ever explain that? Like how on earth, I don't know how spiritual you ladies are, but sometimes you wonder, like, if there's a divine being, how did they let this happen?
Exactly.
It tears it.
It does. Oh,
Sorry, I just don't like
live.
That's
It's
okay.
okay.
I'll be right back.
One of the things that we as parents also, especially us moms, we turn around and we say, our job was to protect our child. That's where our guilt comes in. We're moms. We are supposed to be the nurture, the one to kiss the boo-boos,
Right.
the one to fix
Make it all
things.
better.
And that's where a lot of the guilt comes in. And it does take us a while to and I still have guilt. I'm talking, it's going to be 6 years in May. I still have the guilt that I could have done something. It's softer, and in my head, I know I did everything that I possibly could. In my heart, it's mommy that should have kissed the boo-boo and made it better.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize, you may say it's 6 years ago, but for me, it's today. I think about this every day. It's on my mind, no matter how I try to get away from it. It's always there. And it's one thing I try to tell people, is that you have to be careful saying things like that. For them, you don't know what it's like to have something on your mind, or then you're trying to get away from it, and it's impossible. So when you say something happened a year, like everyone said, okay, a month ago it just happened, a year ago, but 6 years ago, the grieving process is so difficult that I don't think people really recognize that. And I'm sure it would drive me insane to hear move on, or a lot of time has lapsed.
Get over it.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize that. I think people, like you said, they're trying to say something they think will be helpful, but they just don't realize what they're saying.
Right, exactly.
And so I think it's so important in how we show up. Who are we now? And how do we want people to feel around us? By us journeying through this, that's how we get to honor our children. We get to be their voice. We get to express and share things, and it maybe even sometimes, as today, explain some things so that perhaps people hadn't thought of it in that way. They hadn't seen it in that way, felt it in that way. And so that's what we're doing. We're saying, all those years that Adam was in active addiction and reaching for his mental wellness, I was in silence and shame, and I was suffocating on that. And there's something very freeing in the being able to say this out loud. My son died from an overdose.
It's cathartic.
Yeah.
It really is.
And
It's
it
not a
opens,
shame.
there's no shame in it anymore.
Right.
It's not a shame.
Exactly.
And then we hope that people will come to us with that energy.
Yeah. I think the other thing is people make a lot of assumptions.
Absolutely.
What must have happened. And, one of those things, it's not your business. I don't need to broadcast exactly what took place, but I think that to have an assumption is very, very, very harmful. And I think that I think by having Beading Hearts, you can help to break those stereotypes and those molds.
Yes.
That, this is what happened. My kid came from a wonderful house, and they had a great childhood. And this medical this medical treatment led to this. And there's nothing more you could have done as a parent. Like, you just did your absolute best. You provided the best you can for them, and just fate through your horrible situation to live with. And I think that's what people need to get to look at, instead of looking at it as somebody who's hit rock bottom, living on the street, and that
It's their fault. It's
yeah.
And I was going to bring that up. It's funny that you brought it up, because we are just normal parents, just like every other parent out there.
Exactly.
All different walks of life, all different price points as far as what we do for a living. We all are just normal moms and dads. This is not like we're these low lives, or our kids are these low life, losers, and we're terrible parents. That is not the case at all. And that's what a lot of people, where that stigma comes in, and we're trying to change that, because it's so wrong, and so it's adding salt to the wound.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is people need to stop looking at other individuals and stop and think, like, what would it be like in my shoes? Like, there's times where there's a particular route I take that involves William Floyd Parkway, and there's usually a person there, asking for money. Or you'll see people at a bus station, realize, like, these people live here. They live at bus stations, train stations. Like, you think they chose to do this? Do you think they want to choose to go through the embarrassment of asking for money? It became out of their control, and it runs their lives. And to hear people who are recovered, or in recovery, tell about what their life used to be when it got to the point where they had to somehow find a way to fund this just so they could survive, not even to get high anymore. It's just to actually just to survive and to keep from feeling absolutely horribly sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, people, I don't think people get that, you know. And,
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up because through our loss, it's broken us, as you would expect. But in the process of breaking, it's created a space of openness also, of breaking open. And that is showing up with more compassion and understanding that people have big stories behind them. They're not just what you think you're seeing. There's so much more.
yeah.
And exactly. So we are becoming in our recovery of loss, we are becoming better versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
Through
Out of great loss comes the biggest gifts, I always say.
Yeah.
which is true.
That's a hard one, you know. And one of the
It
things
is
I'm
hard.
thinking about when I'm listening to you ladies is that everybody grieves differently. So within the house, how difficult is it? Like for me, if I'm going through it, and my girlfriend grieves a little differently. She wants to quote unquote move on, which is not the case with her. But or you know, another sibling doesn't want to talk about it. Like how what were the challenges there?
There is
True.
huge challenges. with that.
Insurmountable.
Yeah.
It's what breaks families even further apart.
It either breaks them apart or
Or-
brings them together.
And I would say more often.
It breaks them apart.
Yeah.
My husband and I totally grieve differently.
Mhm.
My husband would be on my son's Facebook reaching out to his friends. I, in turn, needed to find my like people. These are my sisters for life.
Absolutely.
I didn't think at a certain age that I am that I would find my best friends. And I did because they understand everything I'm feeling. And my husband and I, he grieves his way. I grieve mine, but we support each other. And I do have Aunt's older brother. He's 5 years older, and he pulled himself away from his brother.
Mhm.
And
He
we
had
also,
to.
he had
Yeah.
to for his
They all have
mental
to.
Yeah, I
health.
was just
That's
going to
right.
say, my son
Yes.
does the same thing. And I think
Self-preservation.
your kids too.
Self-preservation, exactly. And so, and then we as parents, I don't think we told them every single thing that was going on in our lives
Mhm.
with the one that was battling with the addiction, because we already knew there was a rift,
Yeah.
Right.
and we didn't
Wanna
want
make it
that
worse.
rift bigger and
Mm.
bigger.
Mm.
So they didn't know, and now they're dealing, well, with us, we had 2 children. So now our children are only children,
Only children.
are the only
Yeah.
child.
Mhm.
And they have their own set of guilts and
Exactly.
things
You know,
behind.
it's fascinating because there's so many different conversations. So what we've done is created subgroups. One
Mhm.
specifically, the first one we
For the
started was for the siblings.
Yeah.
Because
They-
who do they have? They're like the forgotten survivor, the forgotten mourners.
Yeah.
They've lost, right? It was covered again. And
Okay.
so we also have a special group for people. Can you imagine they've lost their only child?
Yeah.
Or there's parents that have lost
More than
multiple
one.
children, and we
Yeah.
have a group for that.
Yeah.
We just started a group for people in recovery themselves
that have lost
who
children.
lost a child.
Mhm.
Could you imagine that?
And then we
Yeah.
have
And
a
the guilt
group
that-
for the grandparents.
Right.
So in other words, if your child had custody and they don't have it anymore, who gets to go see the grandchild?
Mhm.
That's still a part of our child.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other end of the spectrum is we also work with people that are in jail
Yes.
that for drug issues,
Mhm.
people that are in recovery because we understand where they're at.
We go to
And-
sober homes.
And we champion
It's
them.
very interesting to watch the dynamic because when we first go there, they're very standoffish and shut down
Mhm.
Right, the hoodie is over their head.
until we tell them that we had a child and that child died from an overdose. And that opens up the door and they start asking questions. They want to
Mhm.
hear what we have to say.
Yeah.
It's therapeutic for us.
Sure.
Yes.
It's part
But
of
it
our.
also, I know it firsthand because I do it. I go to these groups
Yep.
and meetings. It's helping them tremendously as well because they're seeing the other side of their addiction.
Yeah.
It's
They're-
huge.
Yeah, they're seeing what their parents, we're voicing what their parents are feeling. And I mean, because when you're going through it, everybody says tough love.
Yeah.
Tough love.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you're
Don't
enabling.
enable. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a big thing, which adds to our guilt.
That's
Yeah.
right.
absolutely.
That's where all the guilt and
A
shame
lot of the
is.
guilt is right there.
Exactly.
In the word choice and in the word enabling.
Yeah.
Very judgmental.
I think that other thing too, it always looks easier from the outside.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, I don't, navigating this in real time is a whole different story. And the way you did it, like you say, if you have to protect the sibling, like you're trying to deal with a crisis and you obviously don't want to advertise and you're trying to quietly, and how am I going to shelter my younger child from this or my older child from that? And navigate within a relationship, how I might say I should do it a certain way, and you might say it should be another way as a spouse, and it's tremendous. I think that when you start to look at it, you see what a tangled web it is.
It's a tangled web. Yeah.
It's
It's like an
hell.
onion, and every layer you peel back, there's
Right.
another layer. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you go to the jails, I'm interested, like, on the clearance. Like, how did that evolve?
Each of us has to be cleared.
Yes.
We have to go
There's
through a
paperwork
process.
and process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, I would enjoy going to that and witnessing that, but I know that there's a lot of
You know what's
There's a lot of
happened
security.
also, and because we go to Yapank and they started the START program for the people who come out of jail.
Yeah.
They want us to continue supporting
Right.
them
To help with them as
Mhm.
well.
because there's been a relationship built, and so we're going to start a Zoom.
That's great.
Is that amazing?
I don't think people
I'm
realize
just
too, like,
amazed by that.
no, I think when people need to realize that when someone goes to jail, their life is now going to be exponentially more difficult when they get out. And then you get out and when you have limited to no resources, you're right back in the environment that got you in trouble in the first place. Very difficult to find support to sustain that. And, it's amazing that people can actually pull out of it. A chance to actually pull through. And the other thing, I guess because my girlfriend deals with recovery, she works in the recovery center, and there's this stigma with people who've been there 2, 3, 10 times. And the way I look at it is like, no one becomes an expert at something doing it once. So if I'm riding a bike, I don't get on a bike and learn how to, ride it on the first attempt. I get on, I fall, I get on again, I fall again. And I think people need to realize with something so difficult, you don't go in one time and master and cure it. And I think people need to understand that. Like this person, a lot of times you may look on it negatively, but this person is trying. They're still
The strength
that I was just going to say. I tell a lot of these people when we go to the meetings, and I truly believe this,
Right.
that they are so much stronger than they give themselves credit for. They usually are very low self-esteem and don't feel good about themselves.
Right.
And in my eyes, they're huge because they're doing one of the hardest things I think anybody can do, and they're doing it. And they're trying. That's enormous.
Every day they have to wake up, fight their addiction, and this goes on for years.
It never
ends. They have to find the strength every day to wake up and say no. I mean, we've heard stories of people, 10 years clean, and they still say they wake up in the morning and they have to make that choice. There is not a cure. It is something that they have to find within themselves, and they have to feel that they're worthy. They have to love themselves. And that's what we try to do.
And we do it for them because we're doing that for ourselves at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The therapy works both ways.
It does work both ways.
It works both ways.
We're worthy of living.
Us helping
even after this greatest loss.
Yeah.
They are worthy of living, and their past is not to define them.
The other thing that's sad and needs to change is the system.
Ah,
Because
mm,
the fact that the jail is implementing this is huge.
Right.
And
the
the
start
medical end of things, like with detox and rehabs, it's all wrong.
Uh-huh.
You can't get fixed in 3 weeks.
Yeah, right.
It's ridiculous, but it's all about money, and it's very sad that these people are pawns in this system.
I think the other thing too people need to recognize about jails is that I've witnessed people and I've discussed with people that if they get incarcerated for one reason or another, and there's no rehab in jail, it's basically just withdraw on your own. And it's particularly cruel and difficult when these people have all kinds of physical ailments, and it's a miserable experience to go through. And I think that, I think people feel that if you're in jail, you ought to be punished and good. It's like, well, no, these people are dealing with a medical condition, so I can't take an asthmatic and remove their inhaler and tell them to go stay in a facility, or a diabetic and not refuse to give them insulin. You need to treat these people. You can't force them to withdraw on their own. And I think that's another cruel aspect that needs to be addressed whenever these issues come up, or in specifically jail.
There's a stigmatism in jail also. My son was in jail, and he was, everybody line up if you're getting your meds.
Yeah.
And then there's the stigmatism because they're lining up to get their meds, and you're hearing it from the other inmates. And so the stigmatism isn't just out here. It's in jail. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that's pretty amazing, because when we did go to jail, actually, and we eated with them, and we had before COVID, and we bring the kits for them to make these beads. And it's amazing because we had a group of men, and they were like, and we were told afterwards, they were like, oh my God, we're going to be making beads and blah, 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 blah. It was amazing how they listened to our story, wanted help with these beads to be made, who they were making them for, the words that they were coming up with, the inspirational sayings. And then after, it was like, I just want to thank my mom, or I want to talk to my dad.
Yeah.
Recovering homes. The first thing they're doing is calling their parents.
Exactly.
I think that's. I have to excuse myself because I have something to deal with, something off camera that basically my pet won't let up. So I apologize about that.
Okay.
Now she's all proud of herself. But that's the other thing. I think a therapeutic outlet is important, and I think that the fact that you can identify with these people is a big one. Because I have to admit that if I was going to a group and trying it for the first time, I'm like, oh God, we're going to do art or beads.
Right.
Like, not my thing. It's not going to help me. But I think that people need to realize that it's different for people. Like, it can help, when you do these things. And I think that just to have them there. I'm more an in-person kind of, I enjoy being at a place, and I think COVID has been such a weird experience for me in a lot. But I've turned around and I've begun to accept this technology where it allows you to meet people, and I think it's just wonderful. Like you're saying, you're having people from different countries now join you. So in some ways, you said it was an interesting. I think you said the word blessing. I'm not sure if you use that, but I think that I think it's phenomenal. And this will be one way that I think that I start to think about it more. It's like, I guess in reality, it's a lot easier than getting up and driving someplace and sitting down and having to get back in your car and drive back, because that gives you a lot of reasons not to go. If it's on my laptop and I could just open it up in, my bedroom or living room, then I'm more likely to go and I'm more likely to participate.
We imagine the people who lost their child during COVID across the country. And if it wasn't for the Beading Hearts and Zoom and technology, who would they have? Where would they go in this isolation?
Yeah.
And so talk about a blessing, talk about a silver lining. That is one of them. And we've made a promise that we will be there every Wednesday night. We made a promise every Wednesday night. We will always be on Zoom, and we'll continue to add in-person events. Slowly, we'll do that, and we'll start doing that across the country too.
The sad thing.
I thought about that, how difficult it must be somebody who is attempting recovery, especially in the beginning of COVID when nobody knew what to do.
That's
and
what I was just going to say.
You know,
The epidemic, as far as the drugs go, has gone through the roof.
Right.
I mean, it's
30+%.
horrendous.
Wait, what was it? 30% higher? Is what you said?
I read it was 44%.
Almost,
Yeah.
over 40.
44%, I think. It's insane.
Staggering.
What's happening.
Wow. I don't think people can grasp that because before COVID, it was a tremendous crisis to begin with. So
Exactly.
the 40+% higher is just like, that's incredible. That's breathtaking. That, oh my God, I can't believe that. Yeah. I think the other thing too is that the feeling of I'm trying so hard to get away from something that I know is bad for me. I've had conversations with people that I met a person, great guy, but he spent about 17 years of his life in his late 30s incarcerated. And his addiction was crack. I was like, what is it about crack that, that you keep falling back into this? And he's like, it's just, for him, it was that intense high. But I find he's different from the people I found that were on heroin, and that heroin was like, they're trying to keep from getting sick.
From getting
They
sick.
lost that high a long
Like
time
not
ago.
having air.
Yeah, and they're just physically very ill.
Physically very ill.
Yeah.
And
And
not just
Go ahead.
a lot of, I mean, I know my son was one of them, and I know other people had the same issue. It's not just the withdrawals, but my son started having seizures.
Okay.
And the seizures kept getting worse. So every time he would try to get clean, there was the risk of having another seizure on top of going through the withdrawals. It was just a vicious cycle.
It's a
It was
cycle.
awful.
Yeah.
You see a new conversation happening also now because of the fentanyl.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Oh my God.
different circumstance.
Yeah.
Like what we're hearing, and of course we don't know for sure, it's like a once and done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mom that being blindsided by like, wait, what just
Happened.
what?
Mhm.
There's so much that we've never spoken about that we're just learning about, that we don't even know how to have a conversation about this fentanyl
I think that's
monster.
people need to realize how frightening this really is, because now you have a drug it's cheaper, so it's accessible, but you don't know what you're getting.
Absolutely.
And you don't know what it's in. What
Yeah.
used to be quote unquote innocent, it's
It's
not
not.
innocent anymore.
I mean, we know people that have lost their children just from smoking pot that was laced with fentanyl.
Right,
Really?
That's insane.
right,
But that
Right.
stuff like that happens.
right.
It is not just
It's-
a
Right.
heroin
It's-
addict or
right.
heavy duty drugs.
Or they're trying to get a pill that is just, whether it be the Vicodin, the Oxy, or whatever,
Xanax.
And it's
and
fentanyl.
it's all
It's
fentanyl
fentanyl.
in a pill.
The toxicology is coming
Yes,
back 100% fentanyl.
Yep.
100%.
100%.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
It's
don't-
disgusting.
They don't stand a chance.
Oh my God, that's frightening. I've never heard of the marijuana being laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I've heard about pills being laced with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But wow.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is innocent. Nothing is safe. Everything's different.
Yeah. It's a whole
You know,
other thing.
You're making me think about something, because one of the things that happens with these street drugs is that you don't know what's in them, right? So then
Right.
you look at something like medical marijuana was passed in in New York State. Now recreational was just made legal. So in some ways, I think that would take some of the danger out of it, in that it's more of a regulated product. And then you hear about other states. I forget what state was it that made it legal for heroin. Was it Wyoming or Montana? A state closer to the West Coast, it was legal. And so these people will be incarcerated for the addiction of the addiction. And other countries have done this, where they've taken away the legal ramifications, and they found that there was less incidents of substance addiction and crimes and whatnot. So sometimes it leads them into a world of crime because there's no place that they can get it legitimately or in a
Exactly.
regulated fashion.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I know this is
That's a big conversation.
We all have a little bit of a different one.
I'm not sure.
yeah, it's hard because
It's-
because you make it all right. So now we made it legal. Maybe we made it easier for other people to get. Yet the people who are addicted, maybe we can. It's a very, very. That's a razor sharp line that
Exactly.
you're walking on with that.
And the other thing too is the legal marijuana is much more costly than on the street marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are still just buying it off the street rather than legally. At least this is what I've been told. So,
To me, that's frightening because when I was a kid, you would have. I went to high school back in the '80s, so like you would have, that kid in class that would. There was a group of kids who were drinking, a couple of kids who were smoking pot, and they were the ones on the fringe. Now, my kids grew up in, suburbia, there's nothing to want for, and there's heroin addiction in towns that you would have never guessed, like
it's everywhere.
I would have never associated with it. So now, you ladies just made me exponentially more fearful now because it's like something in the past I would have thought was trivial, like marijuana, to think now that it's laced with fentanyl. That's a whole different world to live in, and how do you raise your kids in that world?
Very scary.
It's scary, and things. Not only that, they deliver to your door, to your mailbox.
Even in the rehab.
You don't have to go anywhere to meet to get it. You find your connection, and they'll deliver it right to your door. Somebody told us about a tennis ball.
Really?
A tennis ball where they would put the money in a tennis ball, throw it out their bedroom window, and back the drugs would come.
I think you can order the stuff online.
You can order it online. You can do
That's
it.
crazy, right?
It is
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize it's a federal offense too. So you put it in the mail, you just made your problems even bigger.
Exactly.
But I think I had a couple of interesting comments that are coming up. The state that made it legal was Oregon. So I wasn't aware of that. And there's one statement about gateway drugs. And for me, that statement just took on a different meaning about a minute ago talking to you. Because again, like my thoughts on it, I'm a pediatrician. We're like, all right, marijuana is like, okay, it's there. We should avoid it. But I didn't really put marijuana together with, the jump from marijuana to heroin. Even in my mind, that seemed like a big jump. But to find if it was laced with fentanyl, then that statement now really has much more magnitude to me now than about a minute ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. I don't think people realize that. And I hope that people watching this will recognize that and stop and think like, all right, it's not harmless. If I host a party, like graduation parties are coming up, right? We're not
Exactly.
But last year I had one where my friend's child, somebody got too drunk and it was kind of being laughed at. It's like, well, you can actually get intoxicated to a lethal level on alcohol.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't know right away. They might look fine one minute, and all of a sudden the toxicity level was too high. So to me, it was a little frightening. Like, I'd advise the parents, like, listen, you need to call an ambulance. You need to have them under observation and IV fluids because you have to know what level you're dealing with. I don't know how much this kid drank and how fast. And luckily for him, he was that simple. He drank a lot and he got drunk. But I don't think people recognize, like, we tend to think his alcohol is just, it's fine, not a problem. The truth is it's very dangerous, and just as dangerous as, many other drugs that are out there.
And the withdrawal from alcohol is worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people don't realize that. They figure that they can just stop, and that that's supposed to be medically monitored.
Yeah. No,
the withdrawal for alcohol.
From that. Well, I'll never forget when I was, as a medical student, I was rotating through a rehab facility. And this is actually kind of sad because I think I was only there one day in my training. So that's kind of scary. You think that, people are going to be turning me to answers. And I spent a couple of hours one day in medical school dealing with people that are addicted. But
Wow.
I was
Wow.
I was standing there just observing, and the attending was speaking to a patient, and this woman, the family was trying to help her, gain sobriety, to get off alcohol. And they took all the alcohol out of the house, and they was essentially babysitting her and with her. And her statement was, "I realized I had a problem when I started drinking perfume."
Mm.
So I sat there and I was like, "What did she just say?" And it's like the need to get that in any form.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I had no idea the world that these people live in. And how tough your life must be if my parents are trying really hard to help me, and then I'm finding ways around it. Or the other thing, and I wish I kept this post because it was such a good post by somebody who's in recovery, and they were talking about how big it was now to have like their family's trust again, that they can get
Yes.
get a car key, and it was written so well, and I thought I'll remember it, and I didn't. But maybe we could talk a little bit about that, and when your sons were trying, and you were trying so hard to help them, but they were making it difficult. Like, did you experience that?
With my son, everyone said, "Oh, take a picture, take a video
I was
of
told
them
the same
high."
thing.
Well, the only thing in my phone that I have of my son is him high and a video of him high. I don't have
The happy
any
pictures.
happy pictures except
It's
for when he
sad.
was younger, and it's very sad. And
Yeah,
on
me
that
too.
video, he's like, "Mom, do you really think I want this?
And I can remember my son saying the same thing.
I don't want it." And yet, because unfortunately, I was not educated. I thought you could stop.
Yeah.
Right. And we also thought our love was
Enough.
big enough.
Right.
Isn't the way I love you, isn't how we raised you, isn't love enough to save you?
No.
It's not.
And my son had a son.
Isn't right, and
Isn't
your
his,
child
your child
Yeah.
enough?
Important enough.
I told him, write a letter to your son, because you're not going to hear him say daddy. He is not going to know you. And you try everything. I slept with my pocketbook. I didn't find until after he passed what jewelry was gone.
Yeah. Money, jewelry. They
coin
become
collections.
very, very cunning and very good liars.
And they're very good. And you want to believe them. You want to believe them because you love them. And, and it's not just a mom. A dad wants to believe it too. And they're great liars. They lie straight to your face.
But that's the disease. That's not our child.
Exactly.
And that's the difference, where people look at the addiction as the child.
Exactly.
And it's not at all. That is the addiction and the disease. That is not our children.
Yeah.
You mentioned this, and you're making me think of the person, because I was introduced to you ladies through somebody I know who lost his son. And I remember being his pediatrician for him and his brother. And, at one point he was just like, I can't, the polarity between, as a kid, he was well dressed, and he had all the, cute outfits that she had on, she provided everything she could for him. And then to see him in the years where he was in the grips of heroin, were very different. And I was just like,
wow.
What happened? What happened? It's one of those things, like I wanted to say something, like, am I going to make it worse? By comment. So
such a good question.
I'm sorry?
It's such a good question. There you are, bearing witness to this transformation that you see is a deterioration of a human, of a soul, of a spirit. And you are seeing this, and you're a professional.
Yeah.
What could you possibly say or do to?
And what would you have?
What could you
done?
have?
I mean, if you had said it, what advice or what help could you have given the family?
You drive them away at an age, because in the teenage years, they're difficult to begin with.
Exactly.
So how do you walk that line between, I care, I love you, and because really with the parents, the patients I took care of, I hate using the word patients because I really felt that I had friends that I was looking after their kids. That's the way I always approach medicine. I felt it. So when this mom came to me, I had a good relationship with her and her sister and their family's children. And you watch them grow, and you grow with the families, and you know what happened. So I actually was able to interact with him because he was in his late teens, early 20s, and I was still seeing him. So we would talk, and I would try to help him out, like personally with things he was going through. But still, I had that strong desire, like I really wanted to probe and push a little bit. But it was a very, very delicate balance. And I don't know, looking back, I don't know if I did the wrong thing, but at the time, I was challenged.
Absolutely. Oh, you sound like us.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's the same thing, because we don't know if we're pushing, smothering, enabling.
Yeah.
We don't know, but we are doing the best we could.
Right. And our kids, it really is a vicious cycle, because I can remember my son, and he was crying, at 24 years old, saying, do you think I want to be like this? I don't know if I can do that. I can hate myself.
Yeah.
When you do that.
They truly do hate themselves for what they're doing, and they know that they're hurting us. And my son told me he loved me all the time.
All the time.
It's heart-wrenching. It really is. It's horrible. It's horrible, horrible, horrible.
And unfortunately, we never say we have the answers.
No.
We don't have the answers.
No.
We just show up.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things when we go to, we've gone to sober homes and actually spoken to parents.
Yes.
And we are their worst nightmare. We are their worst nightmare because their child is in rehab. And here we are talking to them, and our child died. So you would think that, they'd be like, scared, whatever, but they're looking for answers, and we can't give it to them. And the only thing that we do say is to show up with love.
Love them.
Yeah.
We don't believe in tough love. It's just love and just be there for them, because unfortunately they do have to do it themselves. But we do say to them, don't forget about yourself, because I know I did, and I know we got lost in it.
Yeah.
We forgot ourselves.
We even forgot that there was air to breathe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Our job was taking care of our child.
Consuming.
The other thing I think of, and I do this so people have their opportunity to tell a story, and I found out that you don't even realize who's listening. And, at one point down the line, you may come across somebody who was thinking or inspired by something you said or did, or was just present, and you had no idea. And I think about you ladies talking to these families, like, all right, maybe I met 100 families, but one of them, saved their life. Maybe that one will inspire too. So
that's how we feel about the people we meet in jail and in sober homes. One time when we went to the correctional facility, we went to visit the guys, and I got a phone call a few months later from a sober home. That guy had moved to sober living, and the first thing he told them was, get the Beading Hearts here. He had only met us once.
Wow.
But that glimmer of hope, that message of you matter, that message of you are not defined
by your
addiction. Right. He carried it, and he carries it forward, and now he's carrying it for other people.
And just that one person. It doesn't matter if it's just one person.
That's
if
right.
Anybody.
Exactly.
Just in you ladies talking, because I'm watching the comments, and there are people here that I never realized it affected them personally. They're in recovery, or they.
Things used to be 6 degrees of separation. There's no such thing. Everyone
Everybody
is affected by it.
Somewhere along the line.
It is true.
Everybody knows someone, or they have someone in their family.
Yeah.
And hopefully with us showing up, they can show up. And that's all we want. And one of the biggest, and what we want now for us, we want people to say our child's name.
Yeah.
Our child lived
And
was
mattered.
Yeah.
And we want somebody to say Vaughn, Anthony, Adam. We want them to say our child's name. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid
to come up to us and go, you know, I remember Anthony when he did blah, blah, blah. It's not going to, even if it does hurt and it brings a tear, somebody remembered my child.
That's right.
That wasn't an addict. They remembered my child, not the disease.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
that's one
Beautiful.
of the things we try and we want, and our group does that for the moms, the dads.
Imagine you've lost your child, you're in isolation and you're in
Mhm.
pain and you're suffocating on the loss and the grief, and you get beads that say look up and your child's name.
Yeah.
Someone, a stranger, made them for you, but the energy that goes into picking them and making them,
Mhm.
it's all about letting people know wherever they are on this labyrinth of confusion and loss, that you're not alone.
Exactly.
Right.
There are people, we're with you. There are people who
We
understand.
know.
Whether you come to us on Zoom, whether you come to us on Facebook, whether you make a phone call, a text, you are not alone.
Exactly.
You are
Yeah.
not alone.
Now, I want to, because I want to thank you ladies for your time and coming out early. It's not easy to get people to come out and talk at 9 a.m.
Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate
Yes,
that.
thank you.
But I want to find, how do they find you? Because I know on Facebook they could find you on the Beading Hearts. How else would people who really need to talk about it or really just interested, how else do they find you besides your Facebook page?
They can Google overdose grief, and I think we come up like the second.
Okay.
We are expanding. We have an awesome person, Kim, who takes care of all of our technical things.
Okay.
The Beading
And-
Hearts Overdose Loss Support Group. Google that and everything will come up.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So I'll put that in the comments so that way people know to look for it. And I hope that we get the opportunity to speak again because for me,
Absolutely.
Anytime.
thank you, because I think it needs to be addressed, and I think that if we have it, if we reach somebody, one other person, it's worth it. And like I have to tell you, I thought that I had heard most, and you ladies blew my mind with the marijuana thing today. So I think that it's a learning process, and I think that you're always, whatever you have, there's always somebody who could learn from it. So I thank you for your time and for the
Thank
courage.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So really, let's get together and talk again.
You're wonderful to speak with.
You are.
Yes.
So,
Thank you for
Likewise.
making us
Thank
so
you.
comfortable.
Thank you. It was easy. Well, we'll talk again. But I want to thank everyone else for joining us and for spending this hour with us. And I hope that if you know somebody who's looking to be in recovery or in the throes of addiction, please look into Beading Hearts. We will talk again soon. What I'd like to do also, since I was afraid we were running out of time, but we got a couple more minutes, I guess. I would like other parents to have the opportunity to speak. So if you have anyone who is at a point where they could speak about it and they wish to share their story, please let me know.
Absolutely.
And perhaps we could, maybe we can meet, every couple of weeks or even once a month to just say hi, keep up with you ladies and see what's new. So I guess we'll keep in touch. So
okay.
Love that.
we're lucky that Janet's the only one that I have her number. So I'll go. I'll bother her with everything. But
Okay.
and thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right. Best wishes, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. I think that went well.
That was great.
Oh.
Until
Yeah.